Okay, ladies and gentlemen, uh, yet another week goes by. You might think we're doing this every week, but we just recorded 5 minutes before the other video. But let's not spoil that. But we have been reading our book, even though we have not been publishing videos there. So for our dear viewers who are probably wondering what happened to us, yeah, we just had some time. We just wanted some time off with this video and stuff like that, with our own private commitments and so. But we made some time to give our 2 cents on this uh, book. And I would like to say that the book from the past week had a big part to play for motivating me to do this video. To be honest, the book that we read is The Perfection Trap. Anup is here with me. So Anup, how did you like the book?
Oh, it was awesome. It was one kind of book that I wanted to read like throughout this iteration, right? I wanted to read a book about doing things in moderation, actually. I think we also had these conversations before, right?
Yeah,
And in the reflection trap, it basically is, I think, goes into the similar direction just from the angle of perfectionism, right?
yeah.
So it was something that I needed, and I found it really nice. And I actually quite felt a lot of things written there were really true in my life. So how did you find it?
For me as well, yeah, I found so the writer defines three kinds of perfection that people seek. The first is a self-perfection, the second is a socially doctrine perfection, and the third is perfection from other people, right? I think I'm
Mm,
heavily influenced by the social expectation of perfection, for me at least. I'm always trying to do the best thing that is socially acceptable and not necessarily for my own best interest or which has my best interest as a consequence, right?
mm,
And I would say since childhood it has plagued me quite a bit. And this book was, I would say, a warm or at least a stark reminder that, yeah, you are actually, that it's not normal to have such kind of expectation be laden onto you, and then it's not normal for you to want to keep pursuing them. And uh, some extent it was quite good. There were parts of the book where I got really anxious reading because it was so relatable to me that
mm,
it made me feel like, oh my God, like this is okay, this is quite something.
mm, mm,
Although I would say that the book, from a technical, even though the contents of it were very influential and something that I really liked, from a very
mm,
technical point of view, I think could have been shorter. So the writer keeps repeating on parts of his anecdotes, and then he keeps going back to some of the themes of the book,
mm,
which I was not quite impressed by. But the essence of the book, the content of it, the key bullet points of the books were very, very influential for me.
mm, mm, mm. Yep, I agree with you. There is a lot of parts which I would discuss with a lot of people. So basically, he says that some factors were like social media, I think, the upbringing, right, and third part I actually forgot. But basically, this two things was there, right? And like we were having this conversation a lot. And I mean, you and we don't have social media, like I mean, besides LinkedIn, I guess, right?
Mm.
It is like I've deactivated it since last year. So I think you were like not in Instagram or Facebook even since 2 3 years, right?
Yeah,
So,
I think since 2023.
mm, especially Instagram, I think, was a social media that was not so good for me because
Mm.
I would subconsciously, I think, compare myself always with the bright side of people's lives,
Mm.
and that would lead for me to achieve more and more, right?
Mm.
Be more perfect
Mm.
in some ideal way that I
Mm.
kind of made up, right?
Mm.
And I think that was really toxic because you will never reach that state because you can't be in Barcelona, Porto, and in Brazil, and in every place, right?
Mm,
Like the other people, but you
mm,
would kind of like construct a person like who has
mm,
been there in all these places, right?
mm,
And I think that impacts definitely on your mental state,
mm, mm,
First of all, like that thing that um, was also in the book, which I found like really nice. The second thing was the family, right? And I see that especially in case of South Asian
yeah,
parenting, right? Like,
yeah,
so if you go and write an exam, the question is not um, like did you understood the content, but the question is like did you score the first grade, or
yeah,
are you the first one, or are you the second
yeah,
one, right?
yeah,
And this mentality, I think, boosts perfectionism
yeah,
up to a certain level,
yeah,
right? Where you kind of think like, okay, I always have to be the best,
yeah.
right? Um, and yeah, like those two things. And what more? Exactly, one more thing. um, Sorry that I'm taking so much time.
That's okay.
One more thing. One more thing that was there was which I found like really helpful was instead of going to perfectionism, you should kind of like think about excellence, right?
Yeah,
So instead of performing everything to 100%, like where you have to invest so many resources, so many
mm,
energy into it, just try to achieve 80%,
mm,
and then you can focus on more tasks. Because if you try to invest too much energy on a task,
mm,
um, after this task is done,
mm,
don't want to do the second task, because for the second task you don't have any energy left, right? So,
mm,
and you also want to do the second task perfectly, right?
mm, mm.
So that was something which I actually really felt. And yeah.
I would kind of disagree with that. I think earlier in the chapter he has this discussion with a psychologist about the uh, dichotomy between excellence and perfectionism, right?
Mm,
And she says that excellence is perfectionism masked in moderation. So the
mm,
person who is
mm,
seeking to do the 80% is still trying to do the perfect, like he wants to do the 80%. Uh,
mm, mm,
when you uh, just set a target of doing something rather
mm,
than just doing it the best you can and then saying, okay, this is all I can do, no more than that. I think that's when you're going to hit perfectionism. And the thing is, what I can say that is I can relate to that because I'm like I told you, the social aspect of perfectionism is something that really influences me a lot, and I have always felt that because if you would always score the best grade, then you would probably be expected to keep scoring the best grade. I would always do something like always do the bare minimum. So always try to score higher than the above average and not do too much. So I had been like a 75% student from my grade 4 all the way to my bachelor's. And that's not very normal, but I thought 75% was acceptable margin and I would just work around that. But I realized that because I was associating that 75% as like my alternative to a perfect score, that I'm always trying to do the 75% on that thing and try to have a model personality around it. So I was not necessarily giving my best because I was afraid that if I would give my best and score very well the first time and fail the second time, then I
mm,
would not be a good student anymore. The social
mm,
pressure would
mm,
expect me to, or at least mark me as a guy who was only a actor or something like that, right? As a
mm,
cheater
mm,
or something like that. And
mm, mm,
that I think that's the symptom of perfectionism is that you're trying to attain a certain type of uh, eat or ego in the sense that uh, sorry, a persona so that you can satisfy the society's need of how you're supposed to be like, right? And when it becomes too much, that's when the breaking point comes. And I think the book represents this very well in the sense
mm,
that whenever people try to uh, fill in the shoes that they size themselves to be in the future,
mm,
that's when a lot of difficulties happen. I one thing that I liked, at least in the book, I think the what to do part was a bit lacking I think the writer focused too much on the statistics of perfectionism, the uh,
mm,
epidemic of it, and a lot on the
mm,
sources of the perfectionism, right? But he didn't focus so much on the so what can you do next about it. And considering this is a self-help book in some sense, I thought we could have probably done better there. Uh, and I
mm,
liked at least one message is that you accept failure, that you don't necessarily need
mm,
to just learn from all of your failure. It's
mm,
completely human to fail on stuffs, and you just dust yourself and then do whatever you want to do. You want to do the same thing again, do it. It gives you happiness, do it. It doesn't give you
mm.
happiness any more than just let it be. And I
Uh,
think that is something that I can at least take away from this book, and yeah, that's something that I do.
for me, like, I think what I will do from now on is, instead of, I don't know, like, instead of like doing something perfect, like you said, like I would also achieve, like, for, I mean, like, it's also context dependent, right? Like we had
Yeah,
this, I was had this discussion with someone. Let's say you are a neurosurgeon, right?
yeah.
And you are not doing your job perfect, right? You have a heart surgery or something like that,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, okay, I'll do it 80%, and the rest of the 20%,
Exactly.
it may not work out, right?
Yeah,
So I think there are situations where you can't act like that, but I can imagine there are lots of situations where you don't need to
yeah,
do something perfectly, especially if you have to waste a lot of mental energy and physical energy into it, right? So
yeah,
I think being aware is the first step, right? The
yeah,
second step, I think we are already doing that, you, me, and our friend Aman, right?
yeah,
um, Reducing social media, I think
yeah.
that's also super important.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually even got one step further and we just stopped using it, right? But
Mm,
I can imagine like just reducing it would also kind
mm,
of do it, right?
mm,
Third thing is, I think um, what we have to be careful about is that we don't impose perfectionism onto other people. Like, let's
mm,
say we become parents like in 5 or 6 years, and
mm,
we don't repeat this cycle over and over again with our children.
mm,
Um, where we kind of tell them like, okay, work hard, but it's fine if you fail sometimes, right?
mm,
Um, I don't know, like my parents were super awesome, but
mm,
sometimes I felt like, especially from my father's side,
mm,
if I used to do something good, then he would praise me.
mm,
And if I would do something bad, then he would stop talking to me at all, right?
mm,
Back in the day.
mm,
And I don't know if that was a good step.
mm,
Certainly, like, the pressure would be there, and certainly I would try to improve myself. But, like, I always felt like if your child does something bad, then
mm,
actually then you should be for him or her. So
mm,
this kind of stuff, I think, like, I am much more aware now.
mm. For me, I would be honest with you, I still suffer even though I have removed my social media from perfectionism.
Mm,
And the thing that affects me the most is the fear of failure part of it. So, I don't know if you relate to that, but oftentimes there are things I want to do, but I don't really start them or work on them as diligently I
mm,
want to do them because I have already forecasted myself to not be able to do it as well as some other guy has done it in the world, right?
mm,
There have
mm,
been multiple projects that I have wanted to do since
mm,
my 20s, right? And then I have
mm.
just done the first step and then was dissatisfied with my work then and then just completely stopped it altogether. I used
I
to
know.
write a lot, right? And these days I read what I wrote when I was 25 and think, oh my God, I could write so well. But at that time, I always thought this is insufficient. It's not good. It's bullshit. Nobody's going to read this anymore.
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
that's something that really affects you, and I think it still affects me in the sense that I try to drown myself in some kind of video game or some kind of YouTube videos with the excuse that I'm learning something in the side and not having to dip my feet on things that have to work in, right? Uh, it's always trying to come up with excuses to not do things or at least
mm,
get my hands dirty with with the fear that probably I will not be able to create a product or create a thing output that is quite good. And there will be a social critique, somebody who will say, ah, see, you didn't do a good job with your thing, even though I am very deeply passionate about it. And
mm, mm,
uh, I know that at least even before reading this book, I know that is not the case. But if that's I think that's the difference is that even though you know them, you just don't know how to correct them. And
Mm,
uh,
mm,
the reason why I'm slightly disappointed with this book, even after reading it so well at the start, is that the at the end, I think the messaging, at least the techniques, I would hope some more scientific facts about the techniques to correct your behavior regarding this. And a lot of the messaging, at least for my test, was more wishy-washy or something you preach rather than you show other people. Uh,
mm,
I would
mm,
say this is
mm,
still the second best self-help book we have read. The best being
mm.
The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Uh, and I would still think Atomic Habits is the gold standard of any self-help book
Mm,
because I think
mm,
it
mm.
addresses all the aspect of perfectionism, the ambition, the goals, and everything with a really even hand.
Yeah, I think for me it was the mindset,
No,
from written by Carol Dweck. That was, I think, for me the best one. Regarding the failure thing,
yeah,
um, I I read like other books, and in one book it was put like really well. So if you fail, you are like really down, right?
yeah,
And if you now try to kind of like come to the status quo again, then
mm,
you have done a lot of things, like from
yeah,
failure to go there. So
yeah,
this this growth is much more if you fail and relearn something than
mm,
like if you don't fail at all,
yeah,
right? So you should always take like failure as a friend, like
yeah,
obviously you shouldn't like fail consciously, right? Like I
mm,
mean intentionally, that you shouldn't do, but I think failure gives you a lot of possibilities to learn things, so
mm,
that's actually my take on failure.
mm, yeah. Yeah, at least for me, the fear of failure is one big aspect of it. And a lot
Mm,
of the earlier chapters really encompasses whatever I feel like and how I experience the world, right? And I could say I am a perfectionist even though I fall very short of it, and the unintended consequences of it is also quite stark. I would like to give a very good example. The book states is that perfectionists, they do very well in standardized tests. And
mm,
I told you that I was a 75 percentile student throughout my school life, right? It was not because
mm,
I could not score higher. I mean,
mm,
there would be subjects I would do really well and could score as high as I would want, right? The
mm,
thing is that life these days is more difficult for me is because I cannot have a standardized test or something to quantify my life. So I always
mm, mm.
complain with my friends. I think I have done with you as well. The problem
Yeah.
with finishing your studies is that now you don't have a concrete goal that you target at the end of the year. You don't have a
Mm, mm,
score that you can get at the end of the year that will
mm.
say if you did well or if you did poorly because the field is quite open, right? There's no
Yeah,
metrics to measure your success. There's no
mm,
uh, any goals, any mark sheets, any achievements that is
mm,
uh, given by other people. And when reading this book, I really felt that part. I was like, yeah, I mean, it's indeed true. And I've actually known other people as well who are very good academically, and they struggle with that still. And I have actually
mm,
found people who have overcome this over time,
mm,
and
mm.
I feel it's about time that I should also try to overcome this and try to make
Okay.
at least a part of me. So hopefully I can take whatever I read in this heart and make changes in my life like how you did. And yeah, let's hope that
Yeah.
this book will bump itself higher up in this scale of self-help books that we are speaking about so
Mm.
passionately in our last few last few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I
That
agree with you. For the goal part, at least, I think. after the college phase, you have to define your own goals. I don't
Yeah,
know, like doing a license, and one standardized test, as you said, I think, is the paycheck. Like how much salary you get,
yeah,
right? What's the average salary? And like, I mean, we can search it in the internet, right? And how
yeah,
much you're getting right now. That's not healthy,
yeah,
obviously, because
yeah,
you again start comparing yourself with other people, right?
yeah,
And other situations, but like I think there are still some ways to measure yourself with others, but yeah, like I guess that's not healthy, right?
yeah.
Um,
But I would also say like how can you say that at least in the sense that maybe your influence, maybe some people who are earning less have higher influence in their community, and there are people who are say working from home in a tech sector, earning
mhm,
millions of
mhm,
dollars, but don't really have so much influence in their community. They're living a
definitely,
lonely,
definitely,
isolated life compared to other people who are
definitely.
living a very social life. So the field is quite open now, and there's no single pathway to, judge you in the sense. And also there is like field by field differences in your earning. Uh,
No,
or
I agree with you.
yeah,
I agree with you. I agree with you. It's there. It's definitely there, and I mean, life is not binary. Like it's
yeah,
not about always like being perfect or not, right? Like there,
yeah,
there is so many things. There are so many degrees of freedom in life, right?
yeah,
So I guess life is uncertain, and that's the fun part, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hopefully, at least I like this book to a large extent, and my only reservation is with regards to because it claims to be a self-help book, is there's very little self-help part in it.
Um, I think, like I said before, we are already doing a lot of stuff, and we are already aware of a lot of stuffs.
Mm.
But you are saying it's not helping, right? Like I mean, at least reducing social media is not helping. I don't know. Are you still using LinkedIn, for example?
No,
Because I'm still using it.
yeah, I do. I mean, I use LinkedIn with a certain bit of awareness these days, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it has been some time. I remember seeing a post by a friend of mine who's very prolific with LinkedIn, where he shared like,
Mhm.
oh, I did a presentation in blah 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 university, and
Exactly. Exactly.
I
Exactly.
thought like, I did a presentation like that probably
Mm,
3 or 4 months ago, because of my work at a university, and I was thinking, so what's the difference between his presentation and mine? I presented
mm,
it in
mm,
front of Bundesministerium something something, right?
mm, mm,
And then
mm.
the only difference is I didn't put it up in my social media or something, and so
No, I agree with you.
that realization made me feel like, my presentation was nothing special, to be honest with you. If you look at it, and then I would
Mm,
say other presentation in that same event were also not special at all, right?
yeah.
So there's nothing to really brag about anything there.
Yeah, I had this conversation last week with a friend of mine, and so basically, in Instagram, you kind of people kind of brag about their
Yeah,
social life, free time, and everything, right?
yeah,
And in LinkedIn, I now kind of realize that people are bragging about their professional life,
yeah,
right? So this subconscious comparison is there, I think.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, there are this kind of stuff where we should be aware, I guess. Yeah.
yeah,
Besides that, about parenting, what can we do? I mean, we're adults now, right? So
yeah,
we can't change it anymore.
yeah, yeah. I actually had this discussion with my psychologist a few years ago. Once I
Mm,
went to a psychologist, and then I we were having this discussion, and then somehow I ended up telling her this weird thing is I always thought that, so before moving from away from home, I always thought, it's because my parents don't let me do it, that I'm not doing this thing that I want to do.
mm,
And then since I moved out, I'm still not
mm,
doing those things. So at the end, looks like my
mm,
parents were not at fault at all, right? And I told my
mm,
psychologist that, I realized this thing, and it kind of just makes me feel very bad about myself. And then she was like,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, everybody feels that way. I also felt the same thing. So it was very relatable moment for the psychologist as well that she had she didn't have to spoon feed that to me. I came to that conclusion on my own, but we were laughing about it that yeah, you would think that your parents are at fault for a lot of things, but uh, I mean, I have this theory: is your parents were also are also parents for the first time, right? Uh, I was my parents' first child, so they were also experiencing fatherhood and motherhood for the first time. So they didn't know. They just learned on. They just experimented on me, and I turned out however I turned out to be.
Yep,
So yeah,
good point.
it's a good book. I like it. I would recommend this to other people as well. Uh, nice little experience. Do you want to add anything on?
Nah, I'm good.
Okay. Now for the new week. Do you have a recommendation?
Yeah. This now I think we should slowly also start going into the investment domain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm ending my college soon, and I think I need some knowledge about finance, investment, and entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's one book called Richest Man in Babylon,
Okay.
and it seems to be a nice book. So I would like to recommend that book for the upcoming week.
Okay. And then for next week, we'll be reading The Richest Man in Babylon. Is this by George Samuel uh, Clemson?
That's a really good question. I think, yeah,
George Samuel Clemson.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for the next week, we'll be reading The Richest Man in Babylon by George Samuel Clason. And yeah, this week we had a quite a good read with The Perfectionist Trap. And thank you very much, Anup, yet again for doing this with me. And I think we are
Thank you for
already
having
now
me.
25, 26 books done. It's unthinkable from my point of view, to be honest. I didn't think
Mhm.
we would last this long, but now I seem to have inspired some of my colleagues as well. Some of my colleagues at work were saying that, I'm also reading books these days, and they're not doing one book a week thing, but they are just reading it like
Mhm.
entertainment or recreationally, and they feel like it's quite fun to just read one book. Try to make it a habit of reading a book every day, so that you can, say look back
Mhm.
in the week and then say, ah, okay, I read something about this.
Oh, that's awesome.
So thank you very much, everyone, for keeping up with us, and yeah, we would be back next week again. Bye.
Bye.